Good afternoon to you. Mark Suttoth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion. It is Saturday, September 21st, 2019. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. First of all, I just got back from Texas. What a adventure and incredible journey that was over here to portions of East and Southeast Texas for Tropical Storm Imelda, the fifth wettest tropical cyclone in U.S. history, dumping in excess of 40 inches of rain in some locations. Another major flood catastrophe for portions of Southeast Texas, from Harris County, Chambers County, Liberty County, other counties in Southeast Texas. That'll be an ongoing process for people to recover once again. The barges that impacted the I-10 bridge there, I saw those and thought, wow, that's interesting. They're real close. Probably should have stopped and taken a picture. That would have probably gone viral. I noticed them pretty close, but didn't think much of it because they weren't moving like quickly. You couldn't see them. Oh my God, they're coming for the bridge. But now we know, and I guess that part of I-10, I haven't heard if it's still closed, but man, what a major dilemma and headache for people down there. But I'm back. I had to go up towards Dallas up here to catch a flight home over to Raleigh yesterday, and went and saw my son run cross-country meet at the Adidas Invitational in Cary, North Carolina. Now I'm back in the office down in Wilmington, and here we are. So let's take a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies. This is going to be an important factor going forward. I do believe there's a few things of note here. First, you see, let me choose a different color. We use black. Very cold relative to average across the tropical Pacific here. A La Nina type signature, generally speaking, but then you contrast that with a fairly warm subtropical Pacific, and it's just weird, so lots of rising motion maybe over here, warmer than normal temperatures, cold in the deep tropics down here, and then in the tropical Atlantic from the coast of Africa all the way over to Central America, water temperatures are above the long-term average. In the Western Atlantic Basin between Umberto and Dorian, the sea surface temperatures have been cooled, but the rest of the tropical Atlantic, elsewhere in the Atlantic Basin there, water temperatures running above normal the Caribbean, generally at or above normal just a little bit in the Gulf. Bottom line, plenty of energy to be available for development. And as we saw with Imelda over here in Texas and southwest Louisiana too, a tropical storm or a tropical depression can cause plenty of problems. We have to remember that. That's why I hammer that point home as often as I do. And we're going to be talking about it again here in the next few days as I reference what might be happening here in portions of the islands with this tropical wave, southern islands too, that's coming through, Invest Area 99L. So a lot to talk about. That was the sea surface temperature anomalies map. This is the upper ocean heat content, the latest graphic here from the Atlantic and Oceanographic Meteorological Laboratory, AOML, down in Florida near Miami. This shows us the amount of upper ocean heat content, which is still very high all across the Atlantic Basin here. Plenty of fuel, not just at the surface of the ocean, but fairly deep below. And you know what is interesting as we approach October and getting ready for Halloween, doesn't that look like, I'm going to draw a couple of eyes there. You can draw like a scary mouth. And no, I'm not losing my mind. That's what looks like, two eyes, like some kind of a ghost or something. It's true. And it's like a Rorschach test, and that's what I see. Luckily, nobody lives out in this part of the world, but shipping interest, right? Nevertheless, water temperatures and upper ocean heat content, very formidable here in and around the islands. One of our patrons and good friends of HurricaneTrack, brand new too, just met this fellow through Patreon. He lives down in St. Thomas. Timothy was showing me a graphic yesterday, some data that the water temperatures down there on the order of 85 degrees Fahrenheit and higher. So this is representative of the upper ocean heat content, those yellows and oranges through there, the whites and reds through the Caribbean. Parts of the East Coast here, Southeast Coast, water temperatures have cooled off enough that I don't worry about major hurricanes threatening, perhaps, but You can still get some big ones that come up into the Carolinas, but I'm more concerned about this part of the Atlantic Basin going forward as we get these systems one after the other coming off Africa, moving towards the Western Basin, and the pattern changing both with the steering and what we see with the Madden-Julian oscillation, all kinds of things lining up. Basically, this is the sports equivalent of having a loaded team going into Super Bowl weekend or the Final Four in basketball or the NBA Finals, the hockey finals, the World Series of baseball, whatever. This is it. And as you know, and this is true, and I'm not just spouting off here, this is where sports analogies and the meteorology can help you understand that even in a situation with a team that is heavily favored to win something, stuff can go wrong and they don't win. You know, there's unexpected things that happen. The turning of an ankle, somebody gets the flu, you know, somebody had a bad fight with their spouse or significant other right before the big game, a hangover, whatever, and the game doesn't turn out the way you thought it would, or the series doesn't. All right? And so instead of one particular game, this is more like a series coming up. This is like the Final Four weekend, and anything can happen. When you have the four best teams in college basketball, some weird things happen. And the weather is similar. That we've got this setup here with very warm upper ocean heat content, the very warm Atlantic Basin relative to average here in the tropical Atlantic especially, and all of this with the upcoming pattern over here too suggests a very busy time ahead, but it does not guarantee it. I want to make that very clear. It doesn't guarantee it. Just like a loaded team, you know, look at my beloved, I love them, my Duke Blue Devils. Zion Williamson was not enough to beat Michigan State, and look what happened. You just, it's like, so it's similar in weather, that all of these things can be in place, but you may not get a lot of activity, which of course in this case would be great for people. If we don't have all the activity, or if it does form, everything stays harmlessly out to sea. But I am here to talk about all the scenarios and to make sure that you are informed ahead of time as much as possible without hyping it up too much. And when I see the signals that I'm going to be showing you, I definitely start to talk about it louder and louder, metaphorically speaking. I usually try to keep my voice pretty calm. All right, so what do we have currently in the tropical Pacific here? Don't worry about Kiko. Interesting track, right? That's okay. All right, look at that. It kind of goes southwest and then comes back north and then back. That's crazy. But interest in Hawaii, that's the bottom line of what I wanted to point out here. No worries for you folks in Hawaii. Moving on to the eastern Pacific, lots of activity here. Kiko, Mario, no worries to speak of. But Lorena, what a surprise Lorena has been over the last few days. And let me just back this up. You can go to this archive over here. Look at what happened with Lorena, and I want to show you in the graphics archive. Look at how this evolved over time. Let's go to the correct map. 5-day cone. We'll do it with no line. Look at how this evolved over time. So some of the first forecasts were to keep Lorena fairly close to the coast of Mexico there and west of the Baja, probably becoming a hurricane. And as it evolved, sure, it came in contact with the coast of Mexico, threatened the southern Baja, but the forecast track was up here along the west side, and my good friend Mike Tice, you know him, Theiss, Mike Tice, he went down to Cabo San Lucas, and if you follow him on Twitter, you see that he's been down there tracking this system and reporting on its conditions, and sure enough, over the last couple of days, look what happened. Remember this forecast? I do. Now look what happened. Isn't this incredible? Wow. I mean, you don't see that kind of a change where it was out here and now it's up into the Gulf of California. That is significant. You know, it's been one of those weird years where the track forecasts have not been right on the money. You know, like you remember Dorian it going around Puerto Rico to the east instead of over the Dominican Republic, etc. Right? And so, wow. I mean, that's shocking to see something like this, and it continues to evolve. Now heading on up into the Gulf of California, Go to the last frame there. And some of this remnant moisture may make it up into Arizona. And boy, I wish I could get out there for it, but there's too much going on. I probably can't. I was out there pretty much a year ago, coming up soon for the leftovers of Rosa. And now we have this system coming in. It will bring moisture to northwest Mexico and a good deal of the desert southwest here. And I'll focus on that more in the coming days. I do have several followers and supporters and just the general public out there. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of what's happening. So there's Lorena, still a hurricane, big flood threat for parts of Mexico, the Baja, etc. And we'll watch as that progresses towards potentially the desert southwest of the United States. Now to the Atlantic basin. What can we even start with? We have Jerry, which has really been undergoing a lot of shear, and some interesting things happening with Jerry over the next few days. If we just look at the track forecast from the National Hurricane Center here, this is the official forecast, but I think this is going to change. I'm seeing it in the models now, and I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. It is a threat to Bermuda. Bermuda is right here, but some things are starting to change, and I'll show you that in the Euro here especially in just a moment. Then we also have Invest Area 99L, and if we look at this on the 5-day outlook map, that is forecast to do some modest strengthening, and it could be a flood threat here for portions of the Caribbean. First, down in the Windward Islands, and then in the Northeast Caribbean, maybe Puerto Rico. And really, folks, we have to learn here from what happened with Imelda that didn't look like much of an event, and people focus so much on wind and pressure and storm surge, and if it doesn't match those criteria, they blow it off as being, a nothing event. And just look at all look at what's happening. Just read the news headlines and what's going on in Houston. My goodness, the tornadoes that it spawned. To some people, this was Cat 5 for them. It really was. And we have to keep that into perspective and understand all the hazards that these tropical systems bring with them. And to us, it's an orange X on a map. And this hatched area of orange, what does that mean? That's what I want to explain to you what it means. Then we got to watch this next tropical system coming off. And while a lot of people, rightfully so, I see where they could be right and where they're getting their data, this would go on out to sea. Well, they do, except for the ones that don't. Most of them do curve out to sea. If they didn't, nobody would live along the coastal United States. I mean, honestly, if everything came over and hit the U.S. or hit the Greater Antilles or hit Mexico, Central America, we just wouldn't build, or we'd build a lot better, I guess. But yes, this is more than likely going to turn out somewhere in this corridor, I guess, because it's what they usually do. But it's still over Africa today. Let's just wait and see what happens. That's the best way to approach that. My concern is for this system here and Jerry here, maybe for Bermuda. So let's look under the hood, as I like to call it, and see what's going on in the real world. This is the analysis here from the CIMSS Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies out of the University of Wisconsin. Not only great cheese in Wisconsin and the Badger football and basketball programs up there, but also great satellite products for analyzing the tropics. And here is the vorticity, the energy for the system 99L. There's the vorticity signature with a tropical cyclone symbol on top of it for Jerry. More energy out here near the Cabo Verde Islands. And then this trough kind of hanging out through here. That's the break in the ridge that should allow everything to move through. But this is a snapshot right now, well, roughly. And this changes over time. In fact, let me update this and see if we have the latest. Yep. Is it? Yep, 15 UTC. We don't have the 18, but that's fine. I think these update every 3 hours or so. So we want to watch this energy right here. That's a terrible arrow. And, of course, Jerry right here. And then eventually we'll have some energy coming off the coast of Africa. What does it look like through satellite images? Well, this is the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic kind of joined together. There's Lorena and that stream of moisture tapped going all the way up into the United States. The deep tropical moisture should move on up. And you guys here in southern Arizona, Donna, you here in the Phoenix area, talking to you, hadn't seen you this year. Got to visit Donna last year. Donna has been one of our supporters for a long time, going back to 2011 at least. And you're thinking, well, why would somebody in Arizona be interested in hurricanes? Are you kidding? Look at the influence that the Pacific brings. You know, she also had interest in Mississippi that she was worried about at the time, and Donna has been a long-time friend. And there's other people. Phoenix is a big population area. You bring this kind of deep moisture up, and you can cause flooding. You know, Phoenix area up here, Tucson, the I-10 corridor that stretches through. It's a big deal. Flooding rain is a huge problem anywhere in the world, and especially in the desert areas. There's Jerry getting beat like a rented mule, as the expression goes. That's a terrible expression, but nevertheless, strong wind shear, but that looks like it will abate, and Jerry should try to strengthen as it heads on up towards Bermuda, but will it? I'll show you. I'm starting to wonder. It's like, I'll show you what I mean on the latest Euro. And then here, of course, is 99L, also some shear. But in the Eastern Caribbean, the shear looks like it's going to drop, and we can look at that more in the coming days as this evolves. The bottom line, as we shift over here more towards the Eastern Atlantic, you folks from Barbados down to Trinidad, Tobago, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Grenada, and maybe as far north as Dominica. I mean, honestly, anywhere in the islands, pay attention to what's happening with 99L. And I like the way that I put this. I'll pat myself on the back, give myself a compliment, saying that this weather system is bigger than you are. That's all you need to know. It's bigger than you are, and therefore it can do you harm. So we need to watch this closely and see how this evolves, not just because it could become a storm or a hurricane. We've got to get away from those labels and look at what it is now, not what it's going to be later, all the time. And what it is right now is a big rainmaker with lots of energy, and that's going to be headed towards the islands. All right, so looking at the latest Euro here coming out right now, rendering off the ever wonderful tropicaltidbits.com site. This is the 12Z run, and it looks like it's out to about a week, 168 hours. This is the 5,000 foot level of the atmosphere. Here's the mid-Atlantic, Carolinas, outline Florida for you, Gulf Coast, so forth and so on. There's Puerto Rico. Here are the Lesser Antilles. There's Barbados. That energy right there is 99L. This energy here, or vorticity signature to be more technical, is Jerry. And this is the big old area of high pressure that is sitting out over the Atlantic right now. But there's this trophiness right through here, a little bit of a weakness. And if everything stayed the way it is, Jerry would just find this weakness and head on out. But as I'm going to show you, and this is just one layer of the atmosphere, very important to make sure you understand that. I like to look at this layer because it shows me some very basic structure, and it gives me an idea of general intensity because of how the structure looks. And what I mean by that, real quick, a quick educational tidbit, to borrow from Levi's Tropical Tidbits, right? Here's an educational tidbit for you. This is vorticity in the atmosphere, represented in the model guidance here. The analysis, that's the time frame, like boom, right then. It's a snapshot. And it's real loose, not much wind, not much energy, not much spin. But you compare that to Jerry, which is much more concentrated. Now, to get into the meteorology of what all these numbers over here mean, we don't have time for that and to explain all that. But what I like to look at, just from the layman's perspective, this is weaker than this. We can all agree with that. You know, there's a tropical disturbance in the Pacific. Yeah, it's a little better organized. You see the counterclockwise turning from the little wind barbs there. And, you know, in here we can see this turning of the wind barbs through here. It's a very sharp trough axis. Hurricane Center even mentions that in their latest outlook, that Air Force Recon flew down from St. Croix. And, you know, check this out in their alpha pattern or whatever. I don't know if that's exactly how they flew, but yes, there's a sharp trough axis in here. It's not closed off. It's not a low pressure area with wind blowing in 360 degrees. This is, put a check mark there. So that's what I look for. And then how much more energy is it bundling over time, any particular system? That's what I look for at the surface, so to speak, around 5,000 feet, but also these big high pressure areas. And this is at the surface. See that 1024 right there? That's called, well, that's in millibars. It's 1024 millibars. That's an isobar, a line of equal pressure. So those are the surface pressures. You understand? So that's what the basics of this is. All right? So we move this out frame by frame. We get these in 24-hour increments on this site. There are other sites such as weathermodels.us where you can pay and you get more high-resolution data. But for the free stuff, which everybody has access to thanks to Levi, this is what I'm showing you. All right, so that's now. This is Sunday morning, and you see what happens. There's Jerry still holding on. There's your high-pressure area holding tight. And then this system looks a little bit better organized. And look where it's going, right through the Windward Islands. So my friends through the internet have never had the honor to meet them. You guys down here in the windwards, be ready for this. Squally weather, heavy rain, thunderstorms, gusty winds, and the potential. I mean, look at that. That's a pretty darn sharp little curvature in the wind barbs there. Sharp trough axis coming through. It means business, okay? Heavy rain is coming. We will see video from people down there of flooding and problems and whatnot. It's mountainous. I mean, if you know the geography down there, you understand my concern. So that's 24 hours. There's 48. And look, at 48 hours, look how really compact and energized Jerry starts to get. This is still a little bit ho-hum, and it's moved on past the islands, thank goodness, south of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. John, and so forth. So watch what happens, though. This is 48, and look at 72. Okay, there's Bermuda, and let's just go back one, okay? 48, 72, yeah, that's not following right on the hurricane center path like that, roughly. I don't know if that's exactly right, but that's really interesting, okay? And that's 3 days out. If Jerry isn't this far north, and we get this ridge, I probably should stop, right? That's a change. We go back and we see, moves north, and at 96 it cuts hard right. So it probably gets caught in this troughiness through here still. But maybe not. We shall see. If it does and it gets out of there, look what's trying to develop here. Now, we don't get the advantage of seeing what happens between 72 and 96. For 99L down here, watch down here, it's only 24-hour increments, but look what happens. It gets more energized, right? And it comes right across probably eastern Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and you guys could see some heavy rain. And this is Bermuda right here. Let me use blue to highlight that. There's Bermuda. So this would be northwest of Bermuda. And it looks a little bit weaker in the modeling here. Some interaction with some other features in here, more baroclinic action in the atmosphere. Energy from the trough, that's what that means, generally speaking. And it could be sheared more. It's just not a real healthy look, which is great news for Bermuda. But I think the better news is this sort of weird look. I don't want to call it a trend yet, but that turn straight north almost right there is interesting. And if it doesn't happen, does it come more north and try to cut back? I don't know. I'm speculating. It is interesting to see this change. I think we could all agree with that. So that's 96 at 120. There you go. This tries to develop maybe a tropical storm. A little bit of ridging in the mid-levels here. Way over here is going to be another one, but that's pretty destined to turn out, like I said. And then finally, at day 6, it gets trapped. We are going to have a long, long week ahead, aren't we? I mean, I usually don't do day 6 and day 7, but and when I laugh as in like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. Whoever came up with season of suspense for the Weather Channel. You see that on their tropical coverage. I don't know if they're still running that. That person's a marketing genius, and they need to be promoted, because this is definitely the season of suspense. What we went through with Dorian, all these systems, are they going to go this way? Are they going to go that way? They're sidestepping one island, going around another. You know, that Umberto the core was far enough from Bermuda, and yet they still got over 100-mile-per-hour winds. And what's happening in the Pacific with Lorena going around the other side of the Baja. Somebody at the Weather Channel, big-time promotion coming up. If I could, I would. Byron Allen is the owner of the Weather Channel now and his group. If I were Byron, I'd be finding who that person was, saying, way to go, because this is definitely going to keep us on our toes. I mean, wow. And folks, I'm just telling you, I'm not making this up. At least you can see these. You know, I don't run a conspiracy theory, shock value website or social media campaign. It is what it is. And to leave you with this, are you kidding me? That Madden-Julian oscillation amplification from phase 8, fairly weak, to a heavily amplified into phase 1 is the earmark of, I can't even, there is no sports analogy that will work for this. This is like, wow. Be ready in the western part of the basin and the eastern Pacific, because, wow. I mean, I'm not even going to, if you know what you're looking at here, you know. And for the rest of you that are like, what are we looking at here? This is a strong signal for a very busy time heading into October. And all of this that I just showed you on the Euro, all this right through here, is before that starts to really kick in, if you can believe it. These later days in here are once it starts kicking in. We really have to watch this part of the world coming up. I just can't put it any simpler to you, all right? So that's my job, is to kind of point this out. This is what I would do even if you weren't here watching. This is how I watch the tropics. Before social media and before all these things that we have now, tropical tidbits, etc., this is how I did it. I would look over things and figure out what's happening, but with an audience of over 21,000 on YouTube, 30,000 plus on Twitter, and 16,000 plus on Facebook, and the visitors to the website, which is still the brand that everything goes through. It is my not only honor, but my duty to show you what I see. I believe that very seriously, since I know what I'm looking at. The caveat is, obviously, there are other voices out there. Follow those too. And, I'm not the only one. I don't know everything. And I say if I ever know everything, I'm going to quit, because I'm good. But I'm not omnipotent. I don't know everything. National Hurricane Center, your local market meteorologist, they're all going to be real good. Be careful with some of the posts where you see a hurricane parked over some city 10 days out. You've heard that before. Just kind of reiterating that. But when I see this, that is a huge red flag. Huge. All right? Hate to leave you on a downer, but that's the way it is. It's hurricane season. We live near the coast. We don't live near the coast. Whatever the reason is, we track this stuff. It's important, and it looks like it's getting ready to turn big time favorable for development. Try to have a good rest of your weekend with all that wonderful news. I'll be on top of this. I'll be posting on Patreon frequently. So our patrons, most of it will be public because I want everybody to have access to it. Some of it will be just for our patrons. Check that out when you get a chance at patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. I'll put a link in the discussion, videos, description today. And, of course, I post on Twitter from time to time. And we'll see what happens, all right? Going to be a busy time ahead. As always, I appreciate you tuning in from your device. It's just amazing to me that you're willing to listen and watch as I do what I do, and I thank you for that. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Have a great rest of your Saturday. You bet. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.